Hey everybody, it's Nelson, otherwise known as moshibass. I just got back from the NAMM Show in Anaheim where I was a special guest at the Hamee booth. I had a chance to check out some unreleased Otamatones and even perform with one of my heroes. It was an amazing trip, so let me tell you all about it. So the booth itself was huge, and it had every available Otamatone on display for people to try out. This was actually Hamee's very first year exhibiting at NAMM, and I have to say I think they did a fantastic job designing their booth. Like I said, it was really big, but instead of jam-packing it with more displays, they actually made really good use of the space. People really enjoyed hanging out and sitting on the couches and just playing Otamatones and having a great time. There was also a stage in front, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and there were two televisions that just played a looping playlist of videos by myself, Miklachu, the real Sully G, and even Tosa-san himself. They also brought their Otamatone Jumbo with them, which I was super excited about. I've never had a chance to see one in person, so it was really cool to hold that and check it out. So I actually got a chance to get a lot of inside information about all the new Otamatones that are in the works. I can only talk about 3 of them though, and those were the red, the blue, and the unicorn deluxes. They actually had those on display at the booth. Now the ones at the booth were actually prototypes. They told me that these were literally the only ones in existence at this moment in these colors, but you can expect these colors to come soon. Another previously unannounced accessory that they had on display was the regular sized Otamatone stand. Now, by far, my biggest personal highlight of the Hamee booth and the NAMM Show in general this year was their special guest, Tosa Nobumichi. Now, if you're not familiar with Tosa-san or his work, he is the president of Denki, which is an art unit in Japan. He is also the inventor of many really amazing instruments, including the Otamatone. You may recognize him from the packaging of the Otamatones or from his videos on YouTube demonstrating them. A lot of people think he's just an actor or a personality, but he is the real deal, and he does performances all the time in Japan. It was amazing to have him here in the United States. He performed all day for 3 days. I am not exaggerating. He was playing Otamatone at the Hamee booth for literally 8 hours straight. So it was so amazing to actually get to meet him in person. And if you could believe it, I even had the great honor of performing with him every single day. 2 of the most popular songs we played were Careless Whisper and YMCA. Let me tell you, every time he played YMCA, crowds would just flock to the Hamee booth. People loved that song. But for me personally, my favorite song that I got to play with Tosa-san was the Denki Company song. It was such a special treat to play that song with him and literally share a microphone with him on his song. On stage with us, he also had 3 of his nonsense machines, which are really interesting self-playing instruments that are controlled by his laptop via MIDI. These served as robotic backing tracks for our songs, and it was so cool to get a chance to examine them and talk to him about how they work. Of course, I was mostly playing Otamatone with him, but I also got a lot of opportunities to play the gum bass as well, and I even got to play the bass line for the gum bass song. So yeah, like I said, it was really such an honor and a pleasure to spend time with him, and he was really gracious and signed a lot of stuff for me. And if you can believe it, he even gave the real Sully G and I gifts. When we first met him, he came up to us and he handed us both very special edition gum basses. These are really hard to find. I am going to treasure this. And you know, of course, I asked him to sign it as well, which he very graciously did. Another highlight for me at the Hamee booth was getting a chance to hang out with the real Sully G. We've spoken a little bit online before, but this was the first time we actually met in person, and we spent a lot of time together over the course of the week because we were both at the booth so much. Making content with Otamatones is really just such a unique type of project, and when I first ran into him, we had so much to talk about. We were just sitting on the couches at the Hamee booth talking for like an hour. He's just such a cool and talented guy. He was also there to perform with Tosa-san and even though we each had separate time slots, we both would come to each other's sets and we were sitting in on songs a lot with each other as a trio, which was really, really cool. Believe it or not, the real Sully G is actually a drummer, and of course I'm a bass player, so we had a little group going where he was playing on one of Tosa-san's drum machines, and Tosa-san was on the Otamatone and I was on the gum bass. So we did Another One Bites the Dust, we did Seven Nation Army, and we also just did some kind of improv songs as well. My favorite memory of Sully from this trip, which I will never forget, was taking him to get his first boba. I found out while we were there that he had never had boba before, and one of the staff at Hamee was actually a big boba expert and connoisseur, and so she treated us to a local boba spot, and as a result I have this video which I will always cherish. There were so many great memories made on this trip that I could never fit into just one video. It was such a pleasure and a privilege to spend time and get to know the staff of Hamee. I was also really just so happy to see Otamatone received so well at NAMM. They did such a great job with the booth, and the performances were so engaging. Honestly, I was a little bit unsure what people were gonna think because it's just so different from other more traditional instruments. The booth was just always crowded and people had such a great time there, and everywhere I went carrying my Otamatone, people at NAMM were stopping me and asking about it. So the future is bright for Otamatone, and congratulations to Hamee and their staff for doing such a great job at their first NAMM show, and thank you so much for having me.